Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's session of GradChat from GSA. My name is Tivi Lasuma. I'm the GM for Student Engagement at GSA, and I'm happy to be hosting this session on dealing with anxiety around exam results. And it is a real thing, and as we lead into the sort of tail end of exams, we're going to be talking to some experts in the room. But before I introduce them, I'd like to acknowledge that I'm on the land of the Yakult Wulang clan of the Burong Wulang, where I'm actually currently hosting from today, and pay my respects to the elders past and present and recognise the strength, resilience and capacity of Aboriginal and Torres Strait people in this land. So the two special guests I have in the room today are Mallika Abbott and Persia Hegarty, and a very special guest from CAPS, so University of Melbourne Counselling and Psychological Services. For those who don't know, it's a free service to students at the University of Melbourne, and it's extremely helpful as a resource, especially during these times. So before we start, I want to introduce Mallika is a clinical psychology registrar with experience in child and youth mental health and in a private and acute adult setting. So Mallika seeks to establish a therapeutic relationship with a client to help them develop their own natural inner wisdom. She loves to support clients to flourish in all aspects of their life. And with Mallika, we have Persia. So Persia is also a clinical psychology registrar with experience in education and community health. She has worked with such issues as depression, anxiety, stress, trauma, disordered eating, addiction, self-harm, and personality difficulties. She enjoys working in collaboration with people to make positive changes in their lives and draws upon CBT, which is cognitive behavioral therapy, acceptance commitment therapy, and the long one here, dialectical behavioral therapy. I'm sure I stuffed that one up, and mindfulness approaches. So everybody, welcome to this session. And yeah, again, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you. Thanks, Tavita, for that introduction.
So yeah, look, before you start, I know you guys have got a presentation to go through just to help us navigate anxiety around exams. I mean, for you guys, what's the current situation with CAPS? I know there's obviously it's a busy situation, but at this time, is it exceptionally busy?
Yeah, I mean, we're all working online, of course, not from the uni, so all our sessions are happening over Zoom. And yeah, it is quite busy. I think you know, this first half of the year has been uniquely stressful in many different ways for people. So yeah, we find that our individual sessions and also our group kind of webinars and groups are kind of, yeah, very well attended with both staff and students accessing our service. So yeah, busy time for psychologists, I think.
Oh, well, look, we're very lucky to have that opportunity at GSA and as students to access to the services that you provide.
Yeah.
So I think now I'll probably throw it back to you guys and start going through the presentation, and we'll have chats as we go along.
Great, thanks for that, Tavita. Thank you. So exam result anxiety. So you've probably all finished your exams now, or you're about to finish them if you haven't already. Yeah, well done. As I was just saying, this semester has been the weirdest semester ever, I would say. So the fact that we've all kind of made it through to this point is worth celebrating in itself. But it brings new challenges, and I'm sure a lot of you are a little bit anxious about your results. So Tavita just introduced us both very well. So yeah, I'm Mallika, and my colleague Persia is also here, and we're both clinical psychology registrars. So as Tavita was saying, CAPS is one of the health and wellbeing areas of the university. We provide free, confidential, short-term counselling along with other psychological services like workshops, training, and online resources like this webinar today. So great to be here with you all, and hopefully you find this webinar useful. I'll now hand over to my colleague Persia to start us off.
Great, thank you. So I guess, we're going to sort of address the biggest sort of thing in the room here, the virtual room today, which is anxiety. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about, what that is, what that looks like, and give you guys a little bit of extra information about, why we experience it so often sometimes, particularly if it's something that doesn't feel so nice. So we're going to start off with that today. And I guess, so as I've got here on the slide, what is anxiety? Well, first of all, it actually really does relate to the history of humans. So, in the beginning of humans, it was the ones with anxiety who actually managed to stay alive and were the ones that were able to keep their tribes alive. And this was essentially by being sensitive to the first signs of threat in the environment. So for example, back then it could have been, something like a wild animal. Obviously that is a, life-death situation potentially. So those who were able to sort of perceive and sort of pick up on that in the environment were more likely to survive. So this was sort of a mechanism that's been developed in our brain over time that goes way back to then. And some of you may have heard of it before. It's what we refer to in psychology as the fight-flight response, which essentially is a set of physiological changes that happen in the brain that prepare us to really fight or to run away from danger. So the brain does this by secreting cortisol and adrenaline out through your bloodstream, which really gets you ready for action. And we know that even though back then it was threats such as wild animals, of course the threats that you and I face today are not threats like wild animals on Swanston Street when you're leaving the campus. It might be something like a tram or something, but it is the fight-flight response that does click into gear that sort of alerts you to the potential danger of crossing the road and stops you. So in saying that, what we really want to emphasize today is that, anxiety is a really normal and common experience, first and foremost. The second thing is that it really is an evolutionary process designed to protect us from real or perceived threats. So like I was just saying, it really, back when humans were first sort of around, that it was the mechanism that did keep them alive. And today, even still, it is something that keeps us alive in environments. And the other thing, that I've just sort of touched on is that anxiety is really adaptive, and we do really need it for arousal to perform and survive. We do know that, we don't want super high arousal, obviously, because then it does impact our performance, but we do need that moderate sort of level of arousal that gets us into that optimal performance zone. So those are the three sort of takeaways that we would love for you guys to take from this webinar today, is that those 3 points. And, first and foremost, it is a really normal and common experience. So many people experience this on any sort of day-to-day basis.
And can I just jump in there? And our aim is kind of not to get rid of anxiety completely, because as Persia's saying, it is a common experience and we all have it. But and I guess Persia will go into this, but it's how we experience it and how much of an influence it has on our lives that can turn into be a bit of a problem. So I just wanted to mention that our aim isn't to get rid of it completely, because it is necessary, but our aim is to be able to manage it.
Yeah, and I really love that point, because I think that often if we have this idea that we need to get rid of it, then we're going to be struggling with it for such a long time, because it's, basically impossible, because it is so normal and part of survival. So yeah, I guess, onto that second point following on from that is, how do we experience it? I think, look, a really important thing to remember is that everybody is going to experience anxiety differently. The way I maybe experience anxiety could be different to the way that Mallika, for example, experiences it, and that it can really impact people in different ways. So the first sort of one we look at often in session, and whether you're attending one of our webinars or an individual counselling session, is that we know that we experience thoughts that can be really automatic and unhelpful and often inaccurate. And they could be thoughts, for example, like, what if I haven't gotten the marks I wanted or needed to get into the next degree or to into that internship? They're usually very sort of narrow and focused on a real negative bias. The other sort of aspect of this is, when we have a thought, it usually leads to what we have, like an emotion or a feeling. And this, again, can look like a whole range of different things depending on who you are. And this can be things like feeling fearful or nervous. It could be feeling irritable, angry, or sensitive. It could be feeling really low mood or sadness as well. With that, we also know that when we're experiencing anxiety, like I sort of was talking about before, it is a really physiological response in our body. And so we get physical symptoms as well as a part of anxiety. And again, these range from, you know, feeling tearful to things like feeling nauseous and having butterflies in the stomach. And everybody does experience it differently. So some other common symptoms there are things like rapid breathing or an increase in your heart rate, feeling tense, feeling fidgety, and even, you know, people getting an increase in their bowel movements as well as a really common symptom of anxiety. And then on to that last sort of section there, we've got behavior. So, you know, what actually happens as a result of these three things in the lead up. So it can lead to things like oversleeping, withdrawing from your family and friends. It could be avoiding checking your emails or something, or, you know, if you're waiting for your exam results, it could be that, you know they're coming out in a certain day, but you on purpose sort of avoid that because you're so worried about the potential outcome of what's going to be on your portal and what it says. It could also just be not engaging in activities that help you feel good, like exercise. So the way anxiety, you know, does impact us is through all of these different ways. So thoughts, feelings, physical symptoms, and behavior. So it can be really all encompassing when we do experience really heightened anxiety. So that being said, I'm going to hand over to Mallika now for our next slide to sort of go into one of these sort of sections a little bit more about our worries.
Thanks, Persia, from that. Good snapshot or summary of anxiety.
Sorry, so, Mallika, can I just jump in there quickly?
Yes.
Sorry to interrupt. I just failed to mention before to anyone listening on the show here, please feel free to send through your questions through the Q&A or through chat, whatever you're more comfortable with. And if we have time, we'll definitely address them at the end. If we don't, address them while we're talking. So both Mallika and Persia are seeing the questions, and we'll just see if we can slide them in during there. But absolutely, we'll come back to them at the end if we have time. Cheers.
Yeah. Sounds great. Yeah, thanks, Tavita. So let's have a look at some of these thoughts around exam results in more detail. So you might recognize some of these. Perhaps you have these exact thoughts. Perhaps there's something quite similar. Things like, I'm a failure. I definitely didn't do as well as Sarah or Melissa or Andy, or insert appropriate name there. I'm so stupid. I should have studied harder. If I don't get a high distinction, my life will be over. What if I fail and I can't get into that I can't graduate on time or get into that internship or the PhD program I want? I mean, these are all thoughts that we hear from students. They're very common at the counselling service, and you probably recognise some of these, and if not these exact ones, probably other negative thoughts that are quite similar around this. I want you just for a second to think about, when you have these thoughts, how it actually makes you feel in your body or your emotions. So think some of these thoughts that you're having, and just notice how you feel. Just take a second to notice. I can guess it's probably not that great. It's probably not that great. So some common, sorry?
Probably pretty uncomfortable.
Yeah, pretty uncomfortable. Yeah. So some of those common emotions and feelings can be, you know, feelings of a sense of worthlessness, frustration, anger, feeling like self-isolating or withdrawing, as Persia mentioned before, impatient to get the results, and maybe also feeling a bit sad or even a bit lost. The thing to remember about these thoughts is they're usually inaccurate. I mean, they're very self-critical and mean. They often involve tunnel vision or other thinking distortions, and are just generally unhelpful. You know, these thoughts, they kind of punish us, and they're pretty unmotivating when we think like that. So we just wanted to identify that, because sometimes it's useful to really kind of identify some of your own unhelpful thoughts, because they're usually just going around in our mind and we don't pay attention to them. But if we actually think, okay, what are these unhelpful thoughts that I'm having? It can be really useful to actually look at them in more detail. So what can help? What can help with this? So I'll hand over to my colleague Persia, and we'll start going through kind of our top 10 kind of tips on what can help, some strategies that can help at this time.
Yeah, so obviously, you know, there are many things that we can do to help, but we've sort of tried to narrow it down to 10 ones that you guys want to be able to take away and apply into your own lives, as practical as possible. Like Malika touched on before, and what we sort of talked about in the earlier slide, is that while we might not be able to get rid of anxiety as such, because we know it's normal and it's a really common experience felt by many students, we do know that there are some tips for managing it and bringing down that arousal in the lead up to the results really being released. So the first one we've got here is knowing the signs of stress. Sometimes, despite trying your hardest to stay relaxed, you might still feel really stressed about your results. And sometimes we aren't actually aware that we are feeling this way. And if this is the case, then it is really hard to change the outcome if we're not aware and we don't have that insight to ourselves. So just sort of touching on what, you know, some of these signs actually are is really helpful. And I've got a few here, but of course you may have some others that you're really aware of within yourself. So things like sleeplessness, fatigue, forgetfulness, unexplained aches or pains, lowered and reduced appetite, poor appetite, loss of interest in activities, increased irritability, increased heart rate. Could also experience things like headaches or migraines. And to some extent, some people also report feeling like they have blurred vision or even dizziness. So that's that one. So knowing those signs is really important so that we can actually do something about it, because like I said, if we just don't actually know what it is we're feeling, it's really hard to take effective action based on that. So just checking in with yourself and sort of saying like, oh, I'm feeling these things. Maybe I am really stressed about it. And then, so, you know, the next step, like what to do then. So the next tip we've got in here is reminding yourself of your positive qualities. So similar to what Malika touched on before, we want to get that more balanced thinking. So we do know that our brain has a really negative bias, and this means it tends to have greater activity when we are actually thinking about negative things. So for example, like a depressing or anxious thought can impact our mood more than a positive thought can. And so to prevent negative thinking, doing something like making a list of all the things you like about yourself, the things that you do well in life, the things that you enjoy, how you might be a nice person, and by actually considering these positive things about yourself, we do know that evidence shows you will begin to actually feel better. So that's the first thing you could try. The next one I want to talk about is a really big topic. It's mindfulness. I'm sure many of you have heard of mindfulness before. It's a sort of a bit of a buzzword that gets around from time to time in the psychology world and in, you know, and in the media as well. But I want to tell you a little bit about what that is, because like I said, really big topic. So I'm going to do my best to explain it, you know, in this context today. So what mindfulness really is it's paying attention to the present moment on purpose and really without judgment, which is really important, really big part of mindfulness is that without judgment part. We know that mindfulness is the opposite of mindlessness, where our body is in one place and our mind is in another. So mindfulness instead is about having that real awareness of both what's happening in the present moment and how we're responding to that experience. So mindfulness, it's not a relaxation technique. It can be relaxing and enjoyable, but by definition, this is not the aim. The aim of mindfulness is to increase our awareness of the present moment, even if at times the present moment is uncomfortable or even distressing. So mindfulness is a practice which challenges our brain and actually changes it. So why is this? Well, mindfulness is a really great thing to do because it does lead to change. So practicing mindfulness regularly leads to ongoing changes, and the more it's practiced, the greater those sort of benefits are. Research has shown that mindfulness improves the ability to recover from things like addiction, to managing pain, to assisting with stress and anxiety, and management and recovery from depression, which is sort of more aligned with what we're talking about today, is that stress and anxiety side of things. Corresponding changes in the brain have also been found in areas associated with our emotion regulation, self-control, and attention and concentration, which I think is a really important thing to note when you're a graduate student, is that you really want to be honing in on to that, you know, really good levels of attention and concentration throughout your study. So if we can be using mindfulness to help manage that, then that's going to be really effective and helpful for your studies and performing to your sort of, you know, best of your potential. We also know that mindfulness can also improve our enjoyment of day to day. So by allowing yourselves to be present, you can actually enjoy the moment more. We can connect to people more and in a more enjoyable way and meaningful way. And it helps us make better choices for ourselves and to just be in general more self-compassionate. So how do we do this? So we can either do it through formal meditation, so that involves actually challenging yourself to focus on something in the present moment, such as like your breathing or sounds that you can hear for a set period of time. Inevitably, your mind is going to go wandering, which is perfectly normal. Each time the mind does wander, it is an opportunity to notice that it has gone wandering, and to gently, without judgment and criticism, to bring it back to the object of your attention. So that is so key. It's not about trying to quieten the mind or to silence it or to not go wandering. It's really about noticing that when it has, that we can bring it back to the focus of attention that we were doing. And that's what we want to be focusing on through that formal meditation. Another way to do it is through like a mindful activity. So you can do it while practicing eating or walking or even doing the dishes or brushing your teeth. So when you do this, these sorts of activities in particular, you can kind of do them really automatically sometimes because you often do these things every day. So you try to make a bit of a conscious effort to pay attention more to what you're noticing when doing these activities. So say, for example, if you're brushing your teeth, you want to be thinking about, how that feels in your mouth, how the bristles feel in your teeth and your gums, how the toothpaste smells, how it feels in your mouth, the movement of your wrist and your hand and your neck and your head, and what you can hear, smell, see, or feel. You really want to be getting into those finer details of the actual activity and taking notice of what's happening in the moment. So that's another way as well to do it. There are some really great resources out there for mindfulness, and I could spend hours talking about those, but I'm just going to mention 3 of them. And the first one is obviously our CAPS website, because we've got mindfulness programs, which we will talk a little bit more about later in this webinar. And then there's also apps, which are really helpful for that self-guided practice. And you can do that via Smiling Mind is a great one, but also Headspace. So big topic, mindfulness. Hopefully I've done that justice. On to the next one, which is practicing good self-care, which is our next tip. It can sound really simple, but it's so important to make sure that we are doing this right. Good self-care includes things like, drinking enough water, eating balanced and regular meals, exercising, engaging in tasks and hobbies that you really enjoy. It's reaching out to people who are close to you in your life, like friends and family. And, a really important one is getting that adequate sleep. So as an adult, it's recommended that we aim to get 7 to 9 hours sleep. So that's really important, as well as that really good sleep hygiene. My last tip for this slide here is relaxation and visualization techniques, which I think I saw the link has been posted in the chat. So thank you for that. If anyone is eager to go and check that out more, then it's down there as well. So don't forget to click on that. So some of you might already be familiar with what I'm talking about here. And these can be things like practicing belly breathing or calm breathing exercise, or progressive muscle relaxation exercise. As I don't have time to go through all of these today, that's why I've sort of put the link in there. There are, on this link, guided resources as well on our website. So you can listen to a recording which will walk you through, and also has, some information sheets on the different exercises that we have there. These ones, unlike mindfulness practices, which I said aren't, specifically designed for relaxation, these ones do tap into that a little bit more. So if you are interested in trying these, then absolutely head across to the website and have a look at them. If you feel like you want more sort of guidance and support around these kinds of techniques, then absolutely would recommend making an individual appointment with a counsellor at CAPS who can walk you through a range of these. The other thing I did just want to mention, which is really important, is that if you are someone who has experienced trauma or things like abuse in your past or psychosis, then these techniques are not recommended trying on your own. So they do need to be done with the guidance of a trained health professional. So I did just want to mention that one in there as well, because while they are fantastic techniques to help with that anxiety, you want to make sure that we're setting you up to succeed in doing these, and that it's done in a safe way. So they are my first tips. So knowing the signs, stress, reminding yourself of your positive qualities, mindfulness, practicing good self-care, and then the relaxation and visualization techniques. So I'm going to hand that back over to Mallika now to go through the last 5.
Thanks, Persia. And that was a great summary of mindfulness. Well done. Yeah, huge topic, and you did it justice. I was taking notes. It was really good.
Inspired.
That's great. So the next point is getting back into balance. So usually in periods of high stress, we tend to develop habits that don't really support us in the long run. They might be useful at the time, but actually over a long period of time, they're really not helpful. So it's time to take stock of any habits you've developed over the past semester that you kind of want to focus on changing now. Perhaps you've been drinking 10 cups of coffee a day and want to use this time to cut back to kind of 1 or 2. Maybe you've been existing on energy drinks and takeout food, and it's time to kind of go to the market, stock up on fresh fruit and veggies, and kind of get started on some cooking. Or maybe your sleeping patterns have been thrown out of balance and you want to get back on track. As Persia said, 7 to 9 hours is recommended. We often hear people who have been existing on 4 or 5 hours, and they're often awake till 5 a.m. and, you know, just very unbalanced patterns. So use this time to kind of get back on track. So whatever it is, identify what's gone wrong and then what a more balanced picture would look like. So then you can start implementing changes to kind of get back to balance. Another important tip is to clear your space. So really take some time to do a deep cleaning. Some people find it cathartic to rip up and throw out their study materials, for example, or at least pack them away in a box out of sight. Clearing your space is an indication to your mind that that time in your life is over and you're in a new phase. And I think that's important to do now. So put on some music, turn it up and start cleaning. You may get so into it that you continue from your study area to your bedroom or even the rest of your house. It's almost guaranteed you'll feel a sense of relief and accomplishment once you do that. The next point is to get physical, and this is kind of related to the self-care that Persia was talking about. You know, it's really, exercise is such an excellent way of de-stressing your body, not distressing, de-stressing your body, and clearing your mind. So go for a jog, meet up with a friend at an appropriate distance, of course, and go for a walk, or even treat yourself to a massage, something to get your blood flowing. You may even want to use the gym if you feel safe enough, or and if you're well enough, or do some online classes at home, something to kind of, something to get you moving, get the blood pumping. The next point is to distract yourself. So if you find your thoughts about the exam going round and round and round in your head, it's time to do something different. Distract yourself. Perhaps you have a hobby that you've put off spending time on during semester, or you've been wanting to try something new and you haven't had the time. If you're really stuck on finding something to do, there's a trick here. So remember back to the age of 5 or 6, you know, before study took over our lives. You know, remember back to that age. You know, when we were that age, we didn't do things because we thought that they would be useful for our future, or that we were told that we should do them for whatever reason. We did things because we loved doing them. So this trick can be a good way to kind of remember some of those things that we actually just really enjoyed just for themselves. It might be building Lego or building a model airplane or something. You know, not quite a 5-year-old's job, but you know what I mean. It may be colouring in, it may be drawing, it may be painting. You know, those hobbies can then develop into something a little bit more complicated. But sometimes it's nice to go back to basics if we can't think of something that we enjoy doing, because that can kind of stimulate that part of our brain, and we can remember what we actually just like to do, that we actually just enjoy. Similarly to this, you know, the next point is focus on a new project. So spending time focusing on a goal or even mastering a new skill can take your mind off things at the moment and decrease anxiety while you're waiting for those results. Perhaps you always wanted to learn how to cook, or you wanted to read some novels that you haven't been able to in semester. maybe it's time to make, join the sourdough bread making craze that's taken over Melbourne in these last months. Or maybe you want to rewatch all of Game of Thrones episodes from the very beginning, which is like a great winter ISO activity. Choose something that will take time and dedication and kind of start doing it, start focusing on that. So hopefully these 10 points have given you some ideas. Of course, if you want to talk about any of these things in more detail, or you've kind of got some negative thoughts that you just can't seem to kind of, they're just going round and round, and you kind of do want more help with that, you're welcome to book an individual appointment with us at the Counselling and Psychology Service. And I'm going to hand over to Persia, who will go through a little bit more about that.
Yeah, okay, great. Thanks so much, Mallika, for rounding off our top 10 tips. Hopefully everyone's feeling a little bit inspired and has some ideas to sort of keep that anxiety at bay a little bit, or to try something new. So like you were saying, obviously, yeah, if you are feeling like you want some further support or more individualized sort of help, then coming to see us at the Counselling and Psychological Services is probably a really good idea, especially if you've got a little bit more time up your sleeve now as well. So I guess, what's the really important things to remember about our service is that, yeah, it's free, it's confidential, it is short-term counselling to anyone who is enrolled as a student at the university, but also staff members as well. Because of the pandemic, obviously, like lots of the university, we have been online. So we are still, operating the same way we normally do, but we're just doing it through tele-counselling, which is via Zoom, which I'm sure lots of you are really used to doing now as well after a semester of Zoom classes and lectures and seminars. We do recommend that for first-time appointments, you do sort of call up early in the morning, because we only open up our appointments sort of the day before for the following day, and you can do that online or by calling, either is fine. It's different for return appointments, but for that first-time appointment, if you haven't done it before and you aren't familiar, then getting on and doing it in the morning is the best way to going about it, to make sure you do get an appointment and you don't miss out. Obviously our number is there, but also if you just type in University of Melbourne Counselling and Psychological Services, our webpage will come up too, which will take you through to the online booking. Like we said, yeah, we do short-term counselling, and we do assessment, and we also do referral for specialists or long-term support. So also, if you're just not sure how many sessions or how long you're wanting to engage in counselling for, or how much of a problem it is that you might be experiencing, then coming to see us as well and talking that through with a counsellor is a great idea, because you might be able to get a bit more of a sense about that, and that if it is more than short-term counselling that you need, then we are able to help with that referral and that appropriate sort of linking with somebody or a service who is going to be the right fit for you, because we know that in psychology and counselling that is really important. So I think that's pretty much it about our individual counselling.
Yeah, the next slide we'll talk about some our student workshop programs. So we have quite an active program. A lot of everything is, of course, online at the moment. The Zoom life that we're all living at the moment. So a lot of them have been adapted from our usual kind of workshops that we'd run in person. The first of these is called Break Free from Anxieties. So this is run in 4 one-hour sessions. We have got one open for graduate students starting in July, and expressions of interest open on our website. So if that interests you, please go to register your interest at maybe Andrew will very kindly put that link in the webinar chat if he doesn't mind. Next, another one that we offer every semester is called Beyond Study, Overcoming Social Anxiety, and semester 2 dates are coming online soon. So look out for that if that's something that interests you. We also have several Tuesday lunchtime workshops on things like procrastination or creating social connections, or what are some other ones? Do you remember, Persia, what some other titles are in that series?
Procrastination is always one that comes up for me, because it's
so
popular, like it
so
really
common.
So I think we get some ones also about on this, like studying on the spectrum.
Yes, I think that comes under special interest webinars. Yep.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it would too, actually. Yep.
Yeah. but yeah, if check out our website. I mean, all of the semester 2 dates will be there really soon. So yeah, I encourage you to have a look if any of those interest you.
Yeah, we've got a lot going on.
Yeah, I'll hand over to Persia for the next slide.
Yep, great. So as I sort of mentioned before when I was talking about the top 10 tips, and mindfulness was one of the tips in there, is that if you are really interested in engaging in, learning more about mindfulness or just seeing what it's about, even if, whether you're a beginner or you're more advanced in your practice, is that we have some programs as well run by 2 of our counsellors who are both really well trained in the mindfulness sort of field. And so as I sort of touched on before, what mindfulness is it's paying attention to that present moment, and it's wanting to sort of do that with an attitude of openness, curiosity, acceptance, and like I said before, being really non-judgmental and non-critical. So by sort of, if you are interested in this, then we have 2 sorts of different pathways to go down. We have the introductory mindfulness webinar, which is being run every Wednesday and Friday for the half an hour in the sort of lunch break. And that's starting again in semester 2. So more information about that will also be on our website for that. But that's a really great place to start if you haven't really done much before and you are wanting to give it a go. We do know that, by practicing this regularly, that it's going to help improve your focus. It's going to help better manage stress and anxiety, like I mentioned before, and it helps us really engage more fully in life and to make better choices to take more effective action. Particularly if you have lots of anxious thoughts and worries or feelings that are coming up for you, like Mallika said before, and you just kind of can't get out of that stuck headspace, then mindfulness is really good because it does offer a way to notice and acknowledge them without getting really caught up with them and trying to sort of let those thoughts pass. Obviously, it sounds easier said than done, and that's why we've got these sort of guided ones for students to check in and to give it a go. So we also have another one, which is specifically for graduate researchers, which is really awesome because this is targeting mindfulness for stress management. And it's a little bit more of an involved program. It's sort of a 6-week group webinar program, and it's sort of to develop regular mindfulness practice to better manage your stress and anxiety. With that, obviously, there comes a little bit of expectation that there's going to be some mindfulness practice on your part outside of those groups to make sure you're really honing in on and developing those mindfulness skills. But yeah, it does go for 6 weeks, and the dates for that are coming up on our website as well. But if you are really interested in taking it a little bit more seriously and giving it a real dedicated, committed go, then this is a really excellent group or sort of program to join. So I think that's all for the mindfulness programs.
Thanks, Persia. Next is international student programs. So we have some dedicated webinars, particularly for international students. So yeah, these are, there's usually quite a few each semester. So keep a lookout for these if you fall into that category and you want some more targeted webinars. And then, yeah, the last slide, the next slide, I think is just explaining our website. And sorry, Persia, go ahead. I think you were taking this one.
Oh, that's okay. I guess, we've sort of covered a fair bit about, what we sort of have on offer, but it was just sort of a slide showing you what our website looks like. So, it's a little bit more familiar and you're able to sort of see what it looks like. It's got a few different tabs on the slide, like our resources up the top there, which we've sort of talked about. That's the place you're going to find those guided meditations, as well as lots of other information sheets about just mental health issues in general, if you're looking for some tips and pointers or just general psychoeducation. We've obviously got the tab for the appointments. That's where you go for making individual appointments, and then we've got the student workshop, which we've talked a little bit about in the past few slides, and that's the place to go to see all of the dates, as well as the place where you would go to register for those. We've got services for staff, and then obviously a tab for if you feel like you're in an emergency or if you know somebody else is, then that is also the area to go to. But this is our website page. So if you are interested in any of the things we've talked about today, this is the place to go to.
Great.
Yeah, so that might be almost us, Mallika.
That wraps us up, and we'll hand it back to Lavita.
Thanks so much, guys. Appreciate the presentation. There's such a lot of valuable content there. I think I'm still going through those 10 tips on a piece of paper in the background, just because there's some great tips there. I mean, some of the stuff is just like, wow, I mean, look, yes, it's a great way to deal with anxiety around exams, but I think in general, they're just a great way to deal with anxiety.
Yeah.
And as you guys said, you know, it's a natural occurrence. It's not something that is unique to anyone. I think that's a really powerful statement, because I think a lot of people feel like they're alone when anxiety hits, and you guys will see it more than often. But you know, even dealing, you know, in personal circumstances, or you know, with your colleagues or with your classmates, yeah, I think the key there is that anxiety is around. It'll be here to stay, and it's just managing it is where these tips come into play. But
yeah, that's so true. That's so true. Yeah, we all experience it. So yeah, I mean, these strategies, you're right, are transferable to kind of anxiety in general. And once we have good strategies, you know, they'll be with us throughout our life, you know. So it's about establishing good habits and learning good strategies now, because they'll be useful in 5 years, in 10 years, you know, and for the rest of our life.
yeah, absolutely. Well, look, I'd like to open it up to any of the attendees. If you'd like to ask a question, it doesn't have to be a confidential question. It can be a generic question about anxiety or stress, or even a question around accessing the services from the guys that are on the call. Please feel free to chat it through. You can actually ask the question anonymously also through the Q&A if you don't want to put your name to the question, which is totally fine. They're here to sort of go through those questions. Otherwise, I mean, I saw the plethora of webinars and mindfulness programs you've got coming up. I know that GSA is working with CAPS to provide some more dedicated graduate focused webinars or support sessions. But it's great to see that you know, mindfulness for stress management for graduate researchers, which I thought that was fantastic. And you know, and the break free from anxiety for graduate students. I think that's a great opportunity if you can, especially if you have some downtime, and not everyone's got downtime, especially our grad researchers. It's business as usual, well, as usual in inverted commas for those guys. But the 4 1-hour sessions in July is probably a great time to sort of duck in and duck out, when, you know, just to be able to access the services from CAP. So I was really and I'm impressed, but also grateful that those things are happening in the background. And I think it's really important to link up with university services, because a lot of the services that are provided are dedicated to the context of being a student at University of Melbourne. And I think that's also a big part to play in when we're dealing with COVID and we're dealing with assessments, we're dealing with personal stuff in the background. I think it's a great point of call. But I did also see that it is free, confidential, short term. And I think that's a key term there, is that it is short term. But you guys provide referrals to ongoing support, is that correct?
Definitely, we can. Yeah, either targeted to kind of the particular issues that are presenting, or you know, to other psychologists in the area. I mean, I guess we can refer to psychologists in whatever area you're in. At the moment, it's not so important because most things are online. But yeah, we have a big network of psychologists that we're in touch with, kind of around the state actually, and so yeah, we can facilitate those referrals if needed.
I just think that, yeah, we're also just super lucky, like, because Melbourne has just so many great resources in general for us to be helping people get linked in with. So if it is a really specific issue, yeah, do come along to one of those sessions, and we can help out with that.
Yeah, amazing. Now, just in general, I mean, during this time, you spoke about it, you know, at the start of the presentation, about some of the thoughts, you know, people having, you know, I'm a failure, you know, I should have studied harder. Are there any other, you know, common sort of traits or inquiries coming through to you guys at this time? And if there are, can you share them, and potentially some you know, some quick, I say quick fixes, but some techniques for people to sort of manage that?
Yeah, everyone wants a quick fix.
Sorry.
No, that's okay. One really common one we're seeing right at the moment, and probably very particular to this time, is a lot of people are having anxiety about re-engaging socially. So we've all been kind of physically distanced from people around us, and we haven't been seeing people much in person, our friends or anyone. And a lot of people are feeling a lot of anxiety around that, around reconnecting. So in terms, are you finding that too, Persia, that a lot of people are coming with that issue?
Yeah, look, I think it's just been such unprecedented times. Everybody was so worried about the adjustment to being isolated and sort of thinking like, how am I going to cope with this and not being able to see my friends or the academic community? How am I going to engage in the way I used to with the supports that I'm so used to having there? That everyone took a little bit of time to adjust to that. But then we kind of got comfortable, I guess, a little bit more so in that, and settled that this is the way that life was going to be for a little bit. But then things started to improve in Australia, and things, I think we did better than what we anticipated. And now that restrictions have been lifted, everyone's sort of having to adjust back the other way. And that in itself is like a whole new transition process again. And that can come with some really specific anxieties about like, how do I go and do that again? I almost forget how to be that person I almost was, and I'm feeling quite anxious about that, and lots of ruminating as well about that.
Definitely. And it's a fast moving space. I know just this afternoon, there's a media conference, I think, and maybe some places are locking down again. I don't know. It's very kind of, very unprecedented, that word, it's been overused, hasn't it? But it really is it's a really
so relevant, right?
Changeable time. Yeah. So some strategies that can help with that. I mean, if you have friends or family that are that you feel quite comfortable with or close to, even just voicing that with them, just saying, look, I'm feeling really anxious about reconnecting. That can actually be really powerful, because you're voicing your feelings, and hopefully you will be heard in that. And it also gives the other person permission to then voice theirs as well. It kind of creates a level of openness between you, and it can actually even deeper the connection. So that would be the first point. Take it slow would be another suggestion. I mean, anyway, the recommendation is, not to see your best friend from primary school that you haven't seen for 10 years. The recommendation is really to kind of only see the people that are really important to you and that you need to see, actually. So really just take it slow. Maybe it's just one or two friends that you want to see at present. And in terms of other tips for that, I don't know, Persia, does anything else come to mind to you?
I think just off the back of what you were just saying would be something that's been coming up in my own sort of, counselling spaces, that gradual re-exposure to social interaction, because it can be quite overwhelming and exhausting if you're not used to it. So just really thinking about how you can be, spending your time and energy with those people. So just seeing, one close friend, and that's what your social sort of interaction for the week might be, that's outside of the norm. And then the next week it might be just two people. But it's just about really noticing that we've all been through this really big transition and adjustment period, and that some people might be able to, but for a lot of people it's going to be quite difficult to go back to the way things were, because we're just not used to it at the moment, and that's fair enough.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, and also because the conditions sort of shift and move quite regularly, I think, to take it easy and just take it step by step is probably a good advice, because essentially the goalposts might move again. And so I think it's a good way just to take it slow. Don't jump all in, because, I know that I've got some connections to businesses who, when they found out that they could operate with more people in the venues, and they went and got more stock and, employed more people to get on, and then suddenly it changed overnight. That create a lot more anxiety, even within the industry, employees and people. So I think the key is take it slow. And slightly different context what we're talking now about, but definitely I think anxiety with exam results and anxiety about the situation are totally linked for where we are right this second.
Exactly. Yeah.
I wanted to sort of ask you some logistical questions, if I can, about CAPS.
Yeah.
So is it 9 till 5, Monday to Friday, and hours are the same while semester's over?
Yes, hours are the same currently, and we are Monday to Friday, with the last sort of appointment time of the day being around 3:45. That's usually the last time. We previously were open till 6 o'clock from Tuesday to Thursday prior to this. We're not currently doing that at the moment, but I guess if we continue to be online, then that's something that may change as well, that we may go back to what we used to do, but we're not entirely sure about that yet. Like lots of areas of the university, just sort of taking it slowly as well and seeing, where we're at from week to week. So yeah, 3:45 is usually around the last appointment time, the first one being at 9 a.m.
Yeah, and we definitely work all the way through the break. So yeah, it might be a great time to connect with us because it is a bit quieter. Traditionally, who knows this year, everything might have changed, but yeah, if you've got downtime, it might be a good chance to connect in.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, and for everyone listening, please get in touch with the guys at CAPS. If you're having any of these anxiety, just need to talk to someone about your feelings because they're there and that's what they're there for. But also to, GSA is providing these platforms to engage with the University of Melbourne to showcase a lot of the great work they do, especially targeted around COVID-19 or just supporting graduate students in general. So I'd like to almost take this opportunity to ask Andrew, who's our tech guy in the background, to see whether he can just take us through some of the upcoming activities coming out of GSA. Andrew?
Hi, Tavita. Thanks again to Persia and Mallika for your presentation. That was really great and informative and great to listen to. So just going to talk about the rest of the week that we have planned. Tomorrow at 2 p.m. we have a drop-in dance session with the Naughties Pop Special. And following that, there's going to be a 3 p.m. grad chat that's going to be about discrimination law. Victorian Legal Aid lawyer Jen Lynch is going to be speaking about discrimination law with us there. And after that, we also have general knowledge trivia at 4 p.m. So tomorrow's pretty jam-packed in terms of GSA offerings. On Thursday, on the 2nd of July, there's going to be a convo club for Fight Club at 12 p.m. And at 3 p.m. we have another webinar just about networking where Sophie Bryant from Quiz Employability is going to be talking about that. And to close off the week, we have a Feel Good Friday at 3 p.m. For a band called Bumpy. And they're just a pop jazz soul duo. So that's going to be exciting. But yeah, that's the recap.
I had a look at what's coming up on your website and it looked amazing. Like you're doing such great events. It's like, I was thinking, I wonder if staff can attend or it's really only for graduate students.
We
did not discriminate. So if by any chance you get the link and you register and you're on it, I mean, please enjoy.
I want to join the dancing. It sounds amazing.
It's been getting a lot of traction actually. And I think it's quite nicely linked to, supporting mental health. Some of our students just need an outlet.
100%.
And I think it's just great and it's fun and there's no judgment on it either because if it was, I wouldn't be involved. I definitely need to work on my moves. But look, yeah, we at GSA, we try our best to definitely support our postgrads. And if anyone listening to this on the call or later on, if you find that they've got some ideas or some feedback on what we're doing, please get in touch with us with info@gsa.unimelb.edu.au or either call us on 1-800-GSA-HELP. Monday, Friday, 9 to 5. So happy to get any feedback we can from any of the engagement because at the end of the day, we're here to make sure that you have all the opportunities and support during this time. So that's GSA student engagement. So a big thank you again from Mallika and Persia. Thank you so much for your time from CAPS. Really enjoyed the presentation and hopefully we'll see you again soon on another session.
Thanks
coming
for
up.
having us. Yeah, great.
Absolutely. And thanks to Andrew and the rest of the team for putting this together. So on behalf of GSA and the team, thanks very much and enjoy the rest of the afternoon.